Hi guys! Welcome back to part 2 of my longest trip yet. So just as a quick recap, me and Coco left the Shenandoah Valley and headed into West Virginia to hike with some friends at the Seneca Rocks. And then after a night there, we left to go to our next national park, which was near Summersville, West Virginia. Me and Coco are at the Golly Tailwater River Campground, and you're right next to the dam, so there's a river right here, and on the other side is the Somerville Lake. And this campground is great. It has bathrooms with running water, and it's free. It's very nice. There's only like 18 or 19 camp spots and they're really close together, but free parking, and you're allowed to stay like 14 consecutive days. So we're gonna be here for a few days and explore the nearby national parks. We're at the Summersville Dam now and we're exploring because there's this little overlook on the side of the road. It looks like there's part of how the dam works over there, but we're gonna walk over to this overlook first. Back behind the dam over there is where our campsite was, and over here to the right we saw a nice view of the Summersville Lake. There were signs and plaques explaining that this was a model turbine and that construction for the dam began in the 1960s, creating the largest lake in West Virginia. There were also parks that me and Coco explored and played Pokemon Go in nearby. We ended up staying here 2 nights, and only 20 minutes away was the New River Gorge Bridge, which is a national park, so of course we had to go see it. I am an absolute bridge lover, and even though it looks like a normal highway on the top, the side view is absolutely stunning. It is the longest single arch bridge and third highest bridge in the United States, and it has amazing hikes all around it, and there's a fun celebration that goes on called Bridge Day. The festival was crazy and fun. There were people jumping out of airplanes and off of the bridge with parachutes. It was like nothing I had ever seen. There were hundreds of people who probably jumped off the bridge that day, and everyone was just crowding around watching it. The only thing I will say that was negative is that there wasn't very good crowd control, so if you get kind of claustrophobic, it might not be the event for you because you are all kind of crowded on the bridge, which is not enough space for how many people showed up. Like I said, we stayed multiple nights at that campsite, so we came back to the gorge on a different day to do some hiking. Me and Coco are on the Long Point Trail at New River Gorge National Park. The trail is really easy. Very flat for the most part. We're going downhill towards a overlook of the gorge, and hopefully we'll be able to see the bridge too. It says that it gets steeper on the last bit though, like you're allowed to mountain bike in until the very last bit, so I'll show you when we get there. We saw some mushrooms and of course a lot of pine trees, as the name would suggest, but I was pleasantly surprised by the diversity of trees. The canopy was thicker than I thought, making the forest walk a little bit darker even though it was the middle of the day. This was a well-preserved part of the Appalachian hardwood forest. Place where you can't bike anymore. They have a nice little bike rack, and it is getting a little steeper, but still not too bad. At the end, we were gifted with a beautiful view of the bridge and mountains all around, and it was not too hard of a hike at all, just 1.6 miles in, and you go back out the same way. On Bridge Day, we had become very familiar with the road that goes under the bridge, seeing as traffic was cut off from being on the bridge for obvious reasons. This road takes 45 minutes to get from one mountain down into the valley and up to the next. There was another hike me and Coco wanted to do this day, so we went back down the winding, sometimes one-way road, over a bridge and into the next parking lot for our hike. We were trying to find Wolf Creek Falls Trail to see the Wolf Creek Falls, and it was confusing online because it didn't explain that you started at the trailhead Kmore, which is apparently a 2-mile hike. There were lots of things saying this was an 8-mile hike, and we just didn't want to do all of that. So we ended up hiking to see the bridge, Wolf Creek Falls, and to the first overlook where you could see the New River Gorge Bridge, and that was enough for us. But I've read online and seen some pretty cool pictures that there's like a historic walk that miners went on, and it has signs like "Your family wants you home safe," and it's just a cool historic landmark where you can learn about the walk that these miners took to work. But what we saw was very beautiful. There was a waterfall with fresh, clear water, and Coco drank and played in it. And there was also a pond down at the bottom with very beautiful clear blue water. We stayed another night, and then only 30 minutes away from our campground was Babcock State Park, and they have a historic grist mill which uses its water wheel to grind flour. And they have demonstrations showing how it works every weekend, but we didn't get to see it, but it was still really cool, and Coco, as usual, had a great time in the water. Then me and Coco met up with the same friends we hiked Seneca Rocks with to watch a sunset together, and the next day we explored some train tracks and went on a small hike that I can't even remember the name of, unfortunately. Then we were off on our own again to explore Cathedral State Park. Me and Coco are at Cathedral State Park. We just got here. It's like 5 in the afternoon. We headed here from Buchanan, and we are going to probably go here, do a hike, and then stay the night in the Thomas area. There's a little river walk down in that town where you can park your vehicles, and we visited that town the other day. So I wanted to come here though because it's like a really old preserved forest, a hemlock forest, and there's supposed to be some really big trees, and so far it's already really beautiful. Lots of big trees and lots of moss. So this is like a 2.6 mile loop in total, so it should only be like an hour hike. The park had a lot of interconnected trails that all wound together in kind of a web, so I don't think that I followed one trail specifically. I kind of just wandered around until it was getting dark and I thought I should probably head back. But until I headed back, it was absolutely gorgeous. There were all sorts of mosses and mushrooms covering the ground and a creek that wound its way along a lot of the trails. And I tried to capture the way that the trees looked because they were so magnificent and huge, but I feel like you just can't experience it unless you're there. You just start looking up and up and up farther, and the tree just keeps going. It was so amazing. The trees were huge and so tall. You can see one here next to Coco. And along one of the trails, you ran right up to some farmland, which was gorgeous in the golden hour, but you could hear some cows in some of my videos, which I found pretty amusing. So after we were done at Cathedral State Park, we started driving towards Thomas, and we passed a ton of wind turbines, which I absolutely love. It was really cool to see them on top of mountains though. And it was starting to get dark, and we were looking for a place called Douglas Falls. There was a spot online that is supposed to be right next to Douglas Falls, and I thought we were gonna test out this gravel road and maybe go to it, but we are absolutely not doing that because there's a giant puddle. While it might have been fine to go through this in the van, it's not four-wheel drive and I was all alone and I couldn't tell how deep it was, so I was not trying to risk it in the middle of nowhere where I didn't have good service. So me and Coco drove back the way we came past the wind turbines and ended up in Thomas just in time and found a perfect place to stay for the night. The next morning, we were on to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, where I was going to meet up with some family and explore the quaint city. I of course loved all the wind turbines along the way. When we arrived to this historic Civil War town that's preserved as a national park, we were astounded by the fall colors. It was like the farther north I kept going, the more fall it became. We sightsaw the Jefferson Rock, visited the Harper Cemetery, and went to the Potomac River, where you could see the mountains where the Appalachian Trail runs. We also saw a cool old advertisement that was carved into the side of a cliff. At the end of the day, me and Coco found a Cracker Barrel to stay at, and then we were going to head north the next day. My goal was to get to family in Massachusetts, which is quite a far drive from West Virginia, so I didn't record the next few days because we hardly did anything but stop when we needed to use the restroom or go to the dog park. And then we met up with them in Massachusetts. The fall colors here were even more vibrant, and I was loving it. Like I said in my part 1, it was very nice to visit so much family, but because I didn't ask if they wanted to be in the video, I'm going to leave that part out. But they were wonderful. And we went to sightsee in Salem in October, which can be extremely crowded, but we got very lucky. We went to go visit both of the houses from Hocus Pocus, which people actually live in, so you want to be respectful, but it was so cool. And then we went all the way up to Maine on a day trip, and I got to see that the beaches are very different from the beaches down in the south. I saw what I think was a seal and a lot less shells and a lot rockier shores. We visited a beautiful lighthouse at the end of a long coastal road, and I was lucky enough to be not alone on Halloween. Me and Coco were Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. Then it was time for us to head home to be back to Georgia in time to vote. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, maybe consider giving a like and a subscribe. I just wanted to also let you know I'm working on the van build video, and I was halfway through and I totally lost all my progress, so I am going to restart on that, and I'm sorry it's taking so long. It is probably going to be a few parts because it was a long process to do. Thank you!